going around and around the redundant American oval. Here it's one big parking lot, and there is no parking lot in Venice.
Extended distances in LA are an incredible part of the thinking process, like these stretched time spaces like now that we have for your mind to be able to wander. When you're in your car, you're in complete control. You have climate control, you have entertainment control, you have power control, you have an overextended sense of power and an overextended sense of going forward.
The rideable steer, he talks about the future, and driving is about the future. It's about looking ahead and maybe looking in the rear mirror or not. He calls it the future is filled with opportunities. How one sees, how one remembers, what one remembers, or can you rope? You know, grab the opportunity.
You are what you drive. Jason, with Hans Ulrich in the car, is this sort of performance space where Jason is explicating in great detail, quite fervently, these elaborate and art historical and humorous ideas about how the car performs for him in his art. The car is very much a sort of ready-made object for him. And the cars all have they're all very specifically culturally loaded.
This is a used police car from Clint Eastwood's police department, and I also like that endowed history of it also. But I also like the design of it. This kind of obese, bubbly design was really, it was a completely utilitarian car. It was only meant for state workers and for federal employees.
It was really the cultural importance and the cultural mistakes car stipulated or symbolized.
They're based in tools, idea of a tool for perception, or a vehicle as not a motorized vehicle necessarily, but like a medium, a tool to be used to propel yourself through space.
Jason said to me, it just came to mind, when we were driving, probably the first time we drove, early 90s, maybe 92, when he picked me up from the airport, which became a ritual. He was driving and we were listening to Power 106. He said, it's about power, speed and confidence. And then of course questioning all of that, right? But that was Jason driving. And this was the tool doing it.
I think that the car and how it lies between certain consumer things and certain research things, like we're not locked up in apartments. We're not locked up in these kind of consolidated places that we're kind of, especially here in LA, we have the ability to just to kind of go where it leads us, you know, and I'm a kind of a believer too in not turning around and going backwards. Like in Europe, you have a mind space and also a car space that means sometimes it's better to, if you're trying to find something, that you go and then you turn around and go backwards to the point that you're trying to find. But in LA, it's a bit different. It's a bit, you can veer, like the veering is incredibly important, and the wandering.
His exploration of cars had also to do with his interest, of course, in culture, and particularly between the European relationship to cars and the American relationships to cars. And there you go, you see, that's the race, that's the American race, or that is the European race.
American racing was based on a drag. It was based on like moonshining, you know, so like straight line in one direction as fast as you can, and European racing was always about how to take corners and how the elegance of the race, the elegance of the car, the driver.
So it says he didn't like European traffic. That was European traffic. He liked American traffic. You know, forward, power, speed, and confidence. Now, since the car was a studio, traffic jams he didn't mind them in LA. He didn't like them in Europe.
It's not only a physical part of architecture, how traffic functions, but it's also an incredibly different mind space that happens.
Jason had very specific ideas about American forms of perception into which the car played. As an American, that experience of driving up, parking, getting out of the car, and then going on to have an experience, that sort of driving, parking is like kind of sets the stage for all that follows.
So a car here is very important in this city.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone has one. You know, if you don't have one, you make a conscious decision not to have one. And it's so much of your identity, you know, of who you are and how you function, how economically you're placed, how modest, if you have kids or if you're single, you know, if you make sculpture, you know, you have a small pickup there's all this like incredibly kind of complex observations.
Being born into a farm where it's all to do with the engine, and he refers to it as the cutaway and a controlled explosion. The idea that the car is the result of a controlled explosion is a beautiful way of describing a work of art.
I mean, I think all good thoughts and all good works of art, you know, run on their own as a perpetual motion machine, as mentally and sometimes physically. You know, that they're very alive.
Jason identified himself as a modernist. So he sees himself building on the legacy of Duchamp and Picabia. You know, both had this sort of mechanized abstraction, moving forward, this sort of belief in progress. At the same time, he's making absolutely postmodern art. It's based on fragmentation, information, research, performance. For me, that's one of the really compelling aspects of the work, is this kind of tension between the modern and the postmodern, going backwards and the moving forward that is in the work and sort of made explicit through the car projects.
The book ends with 2 pages. It ends with this beautiful drawing of Los Angeles, and then calls the Southland, and then the next page everything else.
So this is we're approaching the hump. So at all times of the day, there's people that are just parked here. It's a really weird spot.
Why do they park here?
Oh, I'm not really sure. I mean, I think to watch the planes take off. So, just like get off here real quick and see them coming. This is this constellation, Los Angeles constellation, and it's our stars. How those are planes coming in there. Can you see them, Susan? Yeah. And they constantly change. So this is like on my commute up to Pasadena. You see this big dipper, but it's kind of biomorphic. It constantly kind of changes, you know, in the sky.
The idea of the car being this a sort of a rocket ship into another world, but also his home and his studio in his journey throughout the cultures and the world. And the journeys that he undertook as an artist in the 90s and in the early 2000s were very unique to him.
Looking at the car project today, there's something very prescient about our relationship, our questioning relationship to the car right now. And I find when I leave the gallery and go out in the street, cars look really strange.
I had the most interesting conversations about art in the car with him. He was on the road.